Hey friends, remember when I talked way too long about Minecraft? It was awful. Let's do it again. This is now part something of my How Powerful is Minecraft Steve series. Watching the rest of them is not necessary for watching this one, but if you're interested, I'll link the playlist in the description and at the end of the video. So far, I've been trying to figure out what the heaviest inventory of items could be, and how much it would weigh. And in the last video, I went over a whole bunch of stuff, one of which was armor and enchanting. But I didn't fully explore some aspects of it, and the number of mistakes I made in that section was above 0. So, I figured I'd start over from scratch and give it its own video. So now, let's find the heaviest armor in Minecraft. First thing to consider is the material, with the obvious contenders being netherite and gold. For netherite, each piece is made of some diamonds coated in a mixture of 4 gold ingots and some scraps, and also there's an upgrade template in there. For gold, on the other hand, each piece is made of 4 or more gold ingots, which doesn't sound like a lot, but gold is a lot denser than all of those other materials, except maybe the scraps, more on that in a bit. So, trading it all away for more gold could still be better. Right now, the only numbers we can easily calculate are for the diamonds and the gold. Since both of them represent 1/9 of a cubic meter of their respective material, we can calculate the mass of a single gem or ingot by using their densities, giving us 389 kilograms per diamond and 2,147 kilograms per gold. Meaning that boots made of netherite outweigh boots made of gold, which isn't surprising since they have the same amount of gold. And if we include the 7 diamonds from the upgrade template, the netherite helmet also outweighs the gold one. Let's do the netherrack next. Last time, I threw a block of netherrack in the Education Edition exclusive Material Reducer block to find its chemical makeup. The reducer always has 100 outputs, implying that these represent percentages, which means that netherrack is 64% silicon, 18% oxygen, 15% mercury, and 3% of an unknown material. That mystery element is found whenever you break down any supernatural material, but without any ability to analyze it further, I have to just ignore it. Mercury is a bit of a weird addition there. It's on the rarer side of naturally occurring elements, and, as far as I can tell, netherrack is the only thing in the game that includes it as part of its recipe in the reducer. So I still think that the mercury, alongside the oxygen, probably represent mercury oxide, and its mineral form montrodite, because the color, relative softness, and formation pattern of montrodite all fit netherrack reasonably well. With that settled, most naturally occurring silicon is bonded with oxygen, but there's not a whole lot of that left to work with, and there's no compounds with all 3 that really fits netherrack, so instead, I'm going to guess that it's more of a mixture of roughly 64 parts pure silicon to 15 parts mercury oxide. Which brings me to my first major mistake that I made in the last video. As pointed out by these people, the material reducer doesn't specify what these ratios actually are. I assumed that they were by weight or by volume, but it's probably by moles instead. Quick reminder for those who don't remember middle school chemistry, moles are a measure of the exact count of atoms and molecules in something. For example, if you have a bunch of water, H2O, it won't be 1/3 oxygen by weight, it'll be a lot more, because oxygen is really heavy compared to hydrogen. But it will be 1/3 oxygen by mole count, and if we throw any kind of water into the material reducer, we'll see that 1/3 of the output is oxygen. Almost, it's close enough. And a lot of these recipes from the reducer don't really make any sense for any of the options, but I do think mole count is the most consistent. So now for some math. If we start with 64 moles of silicon and 15 moles of mercury oxide, we can use their known molar masses to figure out that it'd be about 1.8 kilograms of silicon and 3.2 kilograms of mercury oxide. After mixing them together, we have 5 kilograms of netherrack. Now that we know there's 1.8 kilograms of silicon per 5 kilograms of netherrack, we can simplify that down to 0.35 grams of silicon per gram of netherrack. Then, using the density of silicon, we can figure out that there are 0.15 cubic centimeters of silicon per gram of netherrack. Doing all that same stuff for mercury oxide, we get 0.06 cubic centimeters of mercury oxide per gram of netherrack, for a total of 0.21 cubic centimeters per gram. Inversing that, we get the density of netherrack being 4.75 grams per cubic centimeter, meaning a full block of netherrack should have a mass around 4,746 kilograms. And that extra mass does bring us to the very boring conclusion that every piece of netherite armor is heavier than their gold equivalents. Most people probably assumed that anyway, but at least now we've proven it. And we still haven't done the scraps. Last time, when it came to the netherite scraps, I just kinda completely ignored them. But plenty of comments shared their theories about what they might be, so let's look over those. In order to choose between them, we have to find the one that most closely resembles the known properties of netherite, so a quick rundown of those. Netherite, as we use it, is a mixture of gold and a raw unknown material. It's very dense and durable, notable for its high heat resistance, ideal for making tools and armor, and seemingly metallic, judging from the texture of the debris and its status as an ingot, though that one can be debated. First theory up, and one I saw a lot of, fossils. The idea is that ancient debris is the condensed bones of long-dead nether mobs, sometimes specifically hoglins, but that's an odd pick, since hoglins aren't fire-resistant, unlike a lot of the nether mobs. As far as bones in general go, they also aren't super heat-resistant. The minerals that give them strength and structure, like calcium phosphate, can survive pretty high heats, but at much lower temperatures, the organic components, like collagen, start to break down, and without those flexible compounds, the parts that are left become incredibly brittle and easy to break. The same thing happens during the process of fossilization. When the collagen decays away and is replaced with minerals, it makes the fossils very fragile. It takes a lot of care to excavate and transport them, and it's part of the reason a lot of dinosaur bones you see in museums are actually replicas. I definitely wouldn't want to make armor out of them. And on top of that, there's no real benefit from a materials perspective in mixing bones with gold. If it was just for reinforcement without the chemical properties of the metal being relevant, you'd think iron would be a better choice. All of these issues could be solved by simply saying that these are super special nether bones with special different properties. But that would mean I can't use the mass of regular bones to figure out the mass of nether bones, and without any other way to test those special properties, I can't use them to weigh netherite. So for the sake of this video being possible, I'll assume for now that ancient debris probably isn't bones. The next theory is lonsdaleite. It's a structure of carbon that's even stronger than diamonds, and some YouTube guy talked about it once. Maybe you've heard of him. I like the idea more than fossils, but it still doesn't really make sense to mix it with gold. You can't make an alloy with a non-metallic element like carbon, and as far as a non-alloy mixture goes, you could maybe embed lonsdaleite in gold, but that's not really a new material as much as it is bedazzled gold. So what about some metals then? A few people mention tungsten. It's heavy, pretty tough, and very heat resistant, but while alloys between gold and tungsten are possible, they're not used all that much, and they'd only really be useful in either making scratch-resistant jewelry or maybe some electrical applications, but probably not armor. I've seen titanium suggested, which has a lot of the same properties as tungsten, and titanium gold alloys are a thing that's used in real life, but they're used for making scratch-resistant jewelry, and some electrical applications, and also dentistry. It does, however, have a higher tensile strength when compared to regular titanium, and can be up to 4 times more durable than some steel. So that's pretty cool, maybe Iron Man was onto something. I would call titanium our most likely candidate, if it wasn't for the last, and what I think is the most likely proposal, that ancient debris is platinum. Only one person commented this, but the more I researched it, the more correct John here became. And, judging from the rest of the comment, I don't even think you know how right you are. Hey, real quick. Older, wiser Schmedley here. While in the middle of editing, I found 2 other comments about platinum, and these ones mentioned that they got it from a YouTube video. So, I tracked it down to this video posted by YouTube account Dragonic 4 years ago. He leaves out a few things that I think are important, but overall, it's a pretty good video. He even references some of the same sources I found, and it's nice to know other people agree with my conclusion. Anyway, it's linked below, back to whatever I was saying. That may sound weird. Platinum isn't very tough, and it certainly isn't traditionally used to make armor, but in 2018, 2 years before the introduction of netherite, material engineers from Sandia National Laboratories published findings about the astonishing properties of a platinum-gold alloy they had created. Despite being made of 2 relatively soft metals, their new alloy was 100 times as durable as high-strength steel, making it the first alloy ever created that reaches the same levels of wear resistance as diamond, which is good since we're trying to make armor with more durability than diamond armor. Platinum gold isn't as hard as some other metals in the traditional sense, but it reacts to heat and wear so well that it outpaces its competitors in a lot of stress tests. As stated by the researchers, if you made tires out of this material, you'd have to skid on them for an entire mile before a single layer of atoms wore down. And this is my favorite part, the nanostructure of the alloy is so specific and just right that it slowly creates its own lubricant by converting carbon in the environment. This coating is nearly identical to some of the best man-made ones, and after it builds up, it makes platinum gold even more resistant to wear. Not only is that a crazy sci-fi thing for a sheet of metal to just do, but also, the coating is black. You know, like netherite. If all that still isn't enough, this stuff is made with a 9-to-1 ratio of platinum to gold. Looking back at Minecraft, netherite is made of equal parts scrap and gold, but while the gold is smelted from chunks of raw gold, which are each 1/9 of a cubic meter of raw gold, the scrap is melted down from ancient debris, which are a full cubic meter. Meaning technically, from a raw materials perspective, we're using 9 times as much raw debris as raw gold, a 9-to-1 ratio. I don't think Mojang intended that one, and it's a little weak if you consider the raw material to be ore and not the raw gold block, but I still think it's neat. Everything considered, platinum gold meets all of our requirements, and 2 extra ones I didn't even put on the list. So I think it's safe to say that scrap is probably platinum. And not only that, I think each scrap represents a massive 9 platinum ingots to maintain that ratio. Working through it all, the additional platinum means that the netherite ingots go from a mass of 8,600 kilograms from just the gold to a total of 94,000 kilograms. So maybe the scraps mattered a little. As a side note, 1 ingot would also cost a little over $3 billion in precious metals. Adding it all together, the full set of netherite armor has a mass of over 400 metric tons, and wearing it in the increased gravity of Minecraft would weigh a total of 1,358,713 kilograms, which is 13 meganewtons, almost 3 million pounds, and 1,135 2,500 elantras. Last time when I did this, a lot of people seemed to think I was measuring in Hondas, so let me be clear. That's Hyundai elantras. I don't measure in Hondas, that would be silly. Now that we have the base armor, we still need to trim and enchant it. Let's start with the trim because, well, it's easier. The heaviest material to trim our netherite armor with is obviously more netherite, and the trims themselves differ only in the central block used to duplicate them. Of the options, the Bolt Trim's copper block beats out the other heavy blocks like terracotta and slate by a lot. The density of copper is 8,900 kilograms per cubic meter, meaning the copper block has a mass of 8,900 kilograms. But, and this is important, as these folks pointed out, you can also use a waxed copper block, which would be slightly heavier. To get a waxed copper block, you take a normal copper block and add a honeycomb. The honeycomb in Minecraft is 1/4 of a honeycomb block, and since the item is used to craft waxy things like candles, and since honey extraction is a completely separate process, I think it's safe to assume that these are empty honeycombs, pure or almost pure beeswax. The density of beeswax is 960 kilograms per cubic meter, so each individual honeycomb has a mass of 240 kilograms. Alongside the copper block and 7 more diamonds, that gives each bolt trim template a mass of 11,862 kilograms. Applying it to each piece of armor with another ingot of netherite more than doubles their masses, and increases the total mass for a full set of netherite armor, bolt trimmed with more netherite, from 400 metric tons to almost 900 metric tons. Finally, and I say that lightly since we aren't close to being done, we still have to enchant the armor. Enchanting takes 3 resources: experience orbs, lapis lazuli, and sometimes books. Experience orbs are the hardest, so I'll save those for last. Let's start with the lapis. Like most other resources with a corresponding block, each item of lapis lazuli is 1/9 of a cubic meter, and the real-world density of lapis hovers around 2,800 kilograms per cubic meter, putting a single piece at 322 kilograms. Easy enough? Books are a little more complicated. They're made with a piece of leather and 3 paper. The leather I calculated last video as 106 kilograms while trying to figure out the mass of a bundle. I might have to revisit that calculation, but the books are really not going to matter enough to worry about it right now. This video is gonna be long enough. What I will correct right now is that I also said that sugarcane paper isn't a thing, and I used bamboo paper instead. As these people commented, turns out sugarcane paper is a thing. Oops. Not all the sugarcane gets made into paper, only some of it, specifically a fibrous tissue called sugarcane bagasse, bagasse? It makes up about 30% of the sugarcane's mass on the high end and has a pulp yield of up to 60%, meaning if you had 100 kilograms of sugarcane, you'd have 30 kilograms of bagussi, and 60% of those 30 kilograms, or 18 kilograms, would become paper. So then how much sugarcane do we have? 3 of it becomes 3 paper, so each piece of paper is made of a single sugarcane. Looking at its texture, it seems like it's 8 cylindrical stalks, each a meter high with a radius of 1 pixel. Last video, I said that this radius translated to 1/16 of a meter, since there are 16 pixels. But as these commenters caught, since these pixels are along the diagonal of the block and not the edge, the radius of each cane should be the square root of 2/16, or a little under 0.1 meters. That makes the volume of each cylinder about 0.02 cubic meters, and all 8 together have a volume of 0.2 cubic meters. Since the density of sugarcane is 272 kilograms per cubic meter, one item represents a total of 53 kilograms of it. And since 18% of that mass ends up becoming paper, that means each sheet ends up at a pretty heavy 9.6 kilograms. Multiply that by 3 and add back in our leather, and we get each book having a mass of 135 kilograms. That brings us to experience. When on its own, experience takes the form of orbs. There's 11 different kinds of them, and they follow a very specific pattern usually. Whenever experience is dropped from most sources, they'll always create orbs of exactly these values, and always prioritize higher ones even if it's different from how the orbs were gained. If your friend collects 7 of the smallest orb, worth 1 XP each, and then he dies in mysterious circumstances, he'll drop 1 of the third orb, worth 7. We even see a similar thing in incremental furnace XP. Even though most smelting produces 1 point or less, when broken, the furnace always drops bigger orbs if possible. From those two examples, we know that the dropping pattern trumps both conservation of orb size and probably conservation of mass. It's allowed to do that since it's like magic or something. With that established, now whenever we have an XP count in non-orb form, we can translate it into orbs. So let's weigh them. Last time I used this equation for the terminal velocity of an object and rearranged it to make this one that uses that terminal velocity to figure out its mass. First up, this is the drag coefficient for the orbs. It can be estimated at 0.47, the known approximate value for spheres, since, they're orbs. Next, this variable is the cross-sectional area, and to find that, first we measure the radius of each orb to get a pixel count. Then we note that pixels in XP orbs are roughly 1/3 the size of pixels in blocks. That means we can divide those radii in pixels by 48 to get them in meters. With that, we plug all those into the formula for the area of a circle to get our values. That brings me to a mistake I made before, because this column of the spreadsheet right here is referencing the radius in pixels, when it should be using the one in meters. I didn't notice the error, but luckily all of these people did, so good catch. Back to our formula, the terminal velocity and gravitational acceleration we can find from this chart right here. These numbers are using ticks as the measurement of time, but we can translate them by multiplying this value in meters per tick by 20 to make it in meters per second, and multiplying this number in meters per tick squared by 20 squared to make it meters per second squared. Which brings up the second major mistake in this formula, because while this is the chart I used, this is the one from the wiki. They're almost the same, except in this one very important value, and I can't find the wrong one anywhere online. I don't know how I got this one. Nobody in the comments noticed this error, but I did. I noticed. Anyway, verifying the new value in-game and correcting the spreadsheet, now we just have one more variable to worry about. The fluid density of air is a known 1.2 kilograms per cubic meter. But, as these fine individuals pointed out, that's a bit of an oversimplification, because this is the fluid density of air on Earth in ideal Earth-like conditions, like temperature, pressure, and gravity. But as I've gone over a few times now, the gravity in Minecraft is kinda stupid, and not very Earth-like. So, the last major piece we need to figure out the mass of experience, and to figure out the heaviest armor in Minecraft, is how to measure the density of air. My first thought was to use this formula, mostly because if you don't know anything about fluid dynamics and you Google how to measure the density of air, there it is. R here is the universal gas constant, that's easy enough, and the average temperature of the Minecraft world is probably roughly the same as the average temperature of Earth, since it supports the existence of all the same kinds of biomes and ecosystems. But this last number is the air pressure, and the easiest way to calculate that is by already knowing the fluid density. I could try to use the barometric formula instead, but to find the pressure with that, I need the pressure, so that's no good either. There is a good number of properties that we can measure in the air, so my next thought was rearranging the universal gas law to see if I could manage to get the only unknown variable to be either pressure or fluid density, and I couldn't. I did, however, find something interesting while researching this one. At y equals 320 and above, the air blocks in Minecraft are replaced with a nearly identical block called void air. They function exactly the same and only serve to note altitudes outside the world, meaning that the build limit is the top of the Minecraft atmosphere, and beyond that is legally the void. That didn't end up being useful in calculating the pressure, but it's as close as we're probably ever going to get to having a Kármán line in Minecraft, so fun fact there. The only other ways to measure the pressure of a gas involve some specialized scientific tools that simply aren't in the game. So, as a completely new plan, what about using relative density and water? Water has already been pretty useful so far in the series. The first episode was all about its spreading properties, it's why the sponge currently sits as the heaviest item I've looked at, and I even already used it to estimate the viscosity of lava. Now, if I measure the terminal velocity of an object in both air and in water, theoretically, the only variable that should change is the fluid density. Unfortunately, that's not true, because the drag coefficient can also change based on the fluid the object is moving through. And for those who haven't been taking a crash course on this stuff for the express purpose of making Minecraft videos, here's the fundamental law of aerodynamics, and to a lesser degree, all fluid dynamics. The more you focus on the drag coefficient, the dumber the math becomes. In this case, we need to worry about something called Reynolds number, which characterizes how a fluid, like air or water, is flowing. It goes from laminar, or smooth flow, to turbulent, or chaotic flow. And while the air in Minecraft does seem more laminar than we're used to, or else this cape would certainly move more, trying to claim that it has the same Reynolds number as water would be a massive stretch. It does mean it's probably a good bit thicker than air on Earth though, so that's something. Since that was another dead end, now we're at Plan C, minecarts. A lot of commenters wanted me to cover minecarts in this series, and I'm sure this is what they had in mind. Since minecarts have a known material, a simple shape to estimate the drag coefficient, and an entry on the gravity chart, that means if we look back at our original terminal velocity equation, the only variable that's still unknown is the fluid density of the air. We craft our minecart with 5/9 of a cubic meter of iron. The density of iron is 7,873 kilograms per cubic meter, giving the minecart a mass of 4,374 kilograms. For the cross-section, the bottom of the minecart is 16 by 20 pixels, but the pixels are slightly smaller than those of blocks. The difference is such that the 16 pixel side, instead of being 1 meter, is 0.975 meters. Assuming that scale is consistent, that would make the 20 pixel side 1.225 meters, making the total area of the rectangle roughly 1.2 meters squared. The drag coefficient of a cube is approximately 1.05, and the minecart is cube-like, but its rectangle-ness will increase the drag coefficient a little bit. I'll estimate it at 1.15, but I won't go too much further into it, see the fundamental law from before. The last two numbers come from our chart, and this time I verified them. So, after rearranging our equation and plugging everything in, we get the fluid density of air in Minecraft as 398 kilograms per cubic meter. Normally, I'd bring something up for comparison, but there really isn't anything to compare it to. That's way thicker than pretty much all gases, but still thinner than most common liquids. So instead, taking that fluid density and using it to find the air pressure at sea level of the Minecraft planet, we have 32,915,337 pascals, which is well over 4,000 psi and roughly 325 atmospheres of pressure. For comparison on that, Venus, sporting the thickest atmosphere in the solar system, only comes in at 92 atmospheres. It's really thick. You know how chickens fall slowly by flapping their wings, like way slower than it seems like those tiny wings should allow? If Steve was a normal human weight, flapping normal human arms would slow him down just like that in an atmosphere this thick. Anyway, now that we have the last number we need for the experience orbs, heading back to our spreadsheet and plugging all of our values into the mass equation for each orb, we find these masses, ranging from 588 kilograms to 2,352 kilograms, a good bit lighter than before. They're still denser than any known Earth element, but they no longer compete with the core of the sun. And, now that I counted the scrap for the netherite, XP isn't even the densest non-water thing in the game anymore. Sorry to all the people who wanted me to check if bottles of Enchanting outweigh sponges. That finally brings us to enchanting the armor. Remember how that's what we were doing? Quick rundown of how enchantments get on armor. If you use an enchanting table, it'll take 1, 2, or 3 levels and an equivalent amount of Lapis Lazuli to apply a semi-random set of enchantments. Simple enough there. If you use an anvil though, it'll cost 1 level if you're renaming it, 2 more levels if you're repairing the target item, 1 level per level of enchantment on the sacrifice item with a multiplier from this chart, and then a penalty number of levels based on how many times both items have been anviled before, according to this chart. And if you're in survival mode, the final cost must be under 40 levels. If all those things together are more than 39 levels, you just can't do it. Now we have everything we need to figure out how to enchant armor in the least efficient way possible. But first, a few quick points. First, I am disallowing incompatible and redundant enchantments. They could theoretically inflate the cost of some operations, but it would make it a lot more complicated, and also I think it would be lame to include them. Second, as all these comments recommended, since the operations for both the enchanting table and the anvil are in level counts, and since levels are not created equally, I'll be assuming that between every usage of XP, Steve regrinds back up to the maximum level possible in vanilla survival Minecraft, which is level 238,609,312. Third, for now, I'm only going to rename each piece of armor once at the end. A bunch of people want me to rename the rest of the items in Steve's inventory, and I'll cover that in some other non-armor based video. But I'm not sure how far to take it. So I want to ask you, anyone who's somehow still watching this far into a video on weighing Minecraft armor, Should renaming the crafting materials of an item count as increasing the weight of the item? So far in the series, the comments have already helped me with two major judgment calls. First, we ruled that it's acceptable to assume conservation of mass in crafting unless we can calculate the loss rate, like with the paper earlier. And second, we decided that shulker boxes count as holding their items, but ender chests do not. So now, I'm asking you directly. If I rename, for example, 4 netherite scrap and 4 gold ingots, should I add the weight of 8 levels to the netherite ingot I craft from them? Let me know your thoughts on that. Now then, for the last video, I made a short Python script with a basic genetic algorithm to try and determine the least efficient way to enchant armor without hitting the anvil level cap. I lost a lot of the source code for that algorithm, but a few viewers on my Discord server, linked below, both recreated and forked my script to try and see if they could solve the problem better. So far, this is the highest cost sequence we've found. Starting with helmets, go and explore end cities until you find an undamaged diamond helmet with only Curse of Binding. Might as well get the whole set while you're here. Explore Fisher Trade to find books with Curse of Vanishing and Mending. Then craft 18 netherite helmets and upgrade the Curse of Binding helmet to also be netherite. Give all 19 helmets a bolt trim using another bar of netherite, and then apply the 2 books to 1 helmet each. For the remaining 16 helmets, enchant each of them at the table with a level 1 enchantment, aiming to have 8 Blast Protection 1, 4 Respiration 1, and 4 Unbreaking 1 helmets. If any fail to get the right enchantment, or get any extra enchantments, discard them, craft a new helmet, and try again. Damage all the helmets slightly, except the Curse of Binding one, then combine 4 of the Blast Protection helmets into 2 Blast Protection 2 ones, all of the Respiration helmets into 2 Respiration 2 ones, and the rest of the Blast Protection helmets onto the Unbreaking ones to make 4 Blast Protection 1 Unbreaking 1 helmets, making sure the Blast Protection is on the right. Then combine the Curse of Vanishing helmet onto the Mending one, and damage all the helmets again, but still not the Curse of Binding one. Combine all the helmets into a Blast Protection 3 one, a Respiration 3 one, and 2 Blast Protection 2 Unbreaking 2 helmets. Slightly damage them all, then combine the Blast Protection 3 helmet onto the Respiration 3 one to make a Blast Protection 3 Respiration 3 helmet, and combine the 2 Blast Protection 2 Unbreaking 2 helmets into a Blast Protection 3 Unbreaking 3 one. Damage all the new helmets, then combine the Blast Protection 3 Unbreaking 3 helmet onto the Blast Protection 3 Respiration 3 helmet to make a Blast Protection 4 Respiration 3 Unbreaking 3 helmet. Damage it, then add the Curse of Vanishing Mending helmet onto it. Don't damage it, add the Curse of Binding helmet onto it, don't damage this one either, and now, finally, rename it. Here's a chart. For the chest plate, do exactly the same thing but replace Respiration with Thorns, and for the leggings, do it a third time but now with Swift Sneak. And only use 2 pairs of Swift Sneak leggings instead of 4, so the final one only has Swift Sneak 2. And for the boots, do it all one more time, replace Respiration with Depth Strider, and also this time replace Mending with Soul Speed 1. If you did everything right, and remembered to grind levels between each use of the anvil, every piece you're left with should represent 19 pieces of netherite bolt-trimmed netherite armor, 19 Lapis Lazuli, 2 books, and over 750 billion experience. Except for the leggings, which represent less of everything except books. Luckily, for the length of this video, we've already gone over the masses of all of those things, so now we just have to tally it up. For the helmet, 2 books have a total mass of 270 kilograms, 19 Lapis Lazuli come in at 6,122 kilograms, 19 netherite bolt-trimmed netherite helmets total to almost 4 million kilograms, and 765 billion experience is represented by a little over 308 million of the largest XP orb and a handful of smaller ones, for a total helmet mass of 182 billion kilograms. For the chest plate, same books, same lapis, 19 netherite bolt-trimmed netherite chest plates are altogether over 4 million kilograms, and the 850 billion XP forms 343 million of the big orb, and some change, for a total chest plate mass of 202 billion kilograms. For the leggings, 4 books come in at 539 kilograms, and 17 Lapis Lazuli have a mass of 5,478 kilograms. 19 netherite bolt-trimmed netherite leggings have a total mass of 3.6 million kilograms, and the 734 billion experience points combine into 296 million of the 2477 orb, and some other ones that don't matter, for a total pants mass of 174 billion kilograms. And then for the boots, we've been over the books and the lapis. 19 pairs of netherite bolt-trimmed netherite shoes also end up just shy of 4 million kilograms, and the 777 billion XP makes 314 million of the biggest orb, and also those, for a total boot mass of 184 billion kilograms. All of that, when added up and after accounting for gravity, finally brings us to the weight for the heaviest known armor in Minecraft at 2,419,997,767,723 kilograms, which is 23.7 teranewtons, 5.34 trillion pounds, and 2.02 billion 2005 elantras. And, since all of that apparently still isn't enough units, the armor also weighs approximately 20.5 trillion bananas, 111 trillion gumballs with a radius of 1.63 centimeters, 1.95 billion 2013 Hyundai Elantras, 7.11 trillion beef sirloins, 1.04 billion 2025 Ford F-150s, a very small fraction of one moon, 240,000 Eiffel Towers, 5.69 trillion American footballs, 1.04 quadrillion standard 2x4 Lego bricks, 2.69 trillion Sonic the Hedgehog novelty toasters, 22 billion LG 27 cubic foot side-by-side smart refrigerators, 24.2 billion Jack's Black, 1.88 billion 2006 Hyundai Elantras, 10.1 trillion Big Macs, 5.43 billion Thanoses, 2.59 billion 1992 Austin Maestro police cars, and 19.5 trillion standard 9mm rounds. Maybe now that's enough for everyone. You may have noticed I added that little qualifier there, and that's because, like I said, the sequence of enchantments that I shared is the most expensive one that my algorithm was able to find while it was running. But it might not be the most expensive one possible, so I might as well see if anyone else can help. If you can figure out a way to enchant armor less efficiently using my same rules, either by script or working it out by hand or by trial and error in-game, let me know, and whenever the series is close to over and I need a final number, I'll see if anyone's beaten my sequence and who's beaten it the most. For the record, since I've been asked, I say when the series is over, but I have no idea how much longer it'll be, because while I keep a list of things left to cover, every time I try and work through that list, it blows up into a huge complicated mess where somehow I have to learn quantum physics to figure out dirt. Even this video was supposed to be like a short 10-minute addendum to the last one, but here we are. So, let me know what else I need to cover to figure out how powerful Steve is, if you have any ideas for the enchanting problem, and also whether or not renaming the crafting materials should increase the weight of an item. I do read all of the comments, even the ones that look like this, so I'm sure I'll see it. Great points here, by the way, Vicky. In the meantime, just know that Minecraft Steve wears the heaviest pants known to man. And stay nice, everyone.